I think I am ready now, so I'm just gonna share my screen and show you a bit of technology here that I think most people will remember like that. Can everybody see it? This used to be how we connected electronically, but over the past couple of years we have had this new device. And that is, I suppose that that many of you are actually watching this on a device. So this device is connecting us around the globe, but it also has some other implications. One of them, of course, is that we're using fewer natural resources. It takes a lot of metal and other stuff to produce the technologies to the left, whereas the technology to the right is smaller. But then it uses more software and less transportation. So there are some really good things about these new technologies. But they also have consequences, and we have changed technologies previously throughout history, and particularly the communication technologies define how many people can we coordinate in a society. How big societies can we keep together if you only have the ink and the feather to the left and you have to write everything by hand, and you have little written documents, rolls with a lacquer steel signum on it, and you have to transport it on horseback across the continent to write people. It would take days or months to get a letter through. With a typewriter and mechanical distribution of print, you could reach many more people in fewer days. And of course, with the electronic media of 10 years ago or 30 years ago, we could reach millions of people. But with the cell phone, we can reach billions of people. And that changes the circumstances for us as humans and as cultures and for our meaning making. And the challenge that we're finding ourselves in right now is that everything within the green box here, those are the communication technologies that we have institutions for, and for which we have legislation. And how, I mean, these technologies have been defining the society that we know. And we don't have the institutions and the legislation and the moral values and the Bildung in place for these new technologies that are to the right of this green square. One of the challenges that we're facing is that whenever we've had these big changes in technologies and we have expanded the groups of people that we could connect and the groups of people for which we needed rules and regulations and institutions in order to coordinate people, there has been a fracture in the culture. There has been a disruption. The old norms, the old institutions, and the old rules have not been sufficient, and that is where we have tended to see different kinds of revolutions. And if we go from the feather and the ink to the typewriter, among other revolutions, we had the French Revolution. We also had the American Revolution or independence, and we had in the 1830s and 1848 revolutions across Europe. And the question is, what is happening as we're going from the old technologies, the nation state connecting technologies, to the globally connecting technologies where we can, I mean, our governments have just told us to stay at home right now, and they've shut the physical borders. And with 30-year-old technology, we would have had to call each other individually to talk across the European borders. Now, thanks to the technology to the right, we can actually communicate with each other and be in a meeting together. And that raises a lot of new questions. It's a totally new circumstance. And one of the latest things that has happened is that due to the coronavirus, there's a lot of misinformation on social media, where governments and also even Facebook, which has been very, let's call it liberal with what they allow to people to share there, it is now being information about the coronavirus where people are trying to convince people that vitamins or scientifically tested medications can cure the virus, that these things are being taken off Facebook and perhaps also YouTube. So there's a limit to our freedom of expression when it comes to recommendations regarding health and the coronavirus. But it's a new situation, and we don't actually have any global legislation with regards to freedom of speech, which is then being now developed, or maybe not developed, but we don't have any democratic control over these social media, so we don't know who is going to be in charge of defining these new rules for what is going to be freedom of speech. So we're facing a whole new situation, and in this process, all of these communication technologies also represent a level of needed education, formal education, and necessary Bildung. How do we behave among each other when we are in still larger groups and societies? So that was my take on Bildung and a society in transition. The globalization and the technologies are changing the circumstances for us right now. And the question is, what kind of Bildung do we need in order to be able to handle that?